Well, hello again. This is Marcia Sinatar, and of course, we've got another archive. This is part two of one of my favorite interviewers, Carolyn Craft, who used to be a host on Wisdom Radio, and it has to do with a book of mine about spiritual intelligence. As you're going to hear, and you heard it on part one, I hope you listened to part one. Spiritual intelligence is really not about taking tests to find out how spiritually smart we are. It's not about a psychologist or spiritual director or church or anybody measuring us. It's not like that. It is the foundation of the sentient perceiving element in man. Man meaning human. Spiritual intelligence, the foundation of our animation, that which animates us. Okay, let's look at this word animate. Many things animate us. Even as children, we could be animated by fear. We could be animated by hostility or anger or depression as we get older specifically. So I think what we have to do is test that spirit of animation. And the Bible refers to this as testing the spirit. And we read in the Bible, John, I think, the book of John, that it's the breath in Acts. It's the breath, the wind, the active element, the animating essence of our true self. So when we hear about measuring our emotional intelligence, our mechanical or technical ability, our social intelligence, all of this is built on the foundation of our spiritual intelligence, our spiritual, infinite, animating essence, the who of who we really are. In the Bible, and one of the my favorite expository dictionaries, biblical dictionaries, calls the spirit the naked part of man, which reminds me then in the garden, Adam and Eve are naked. This doesn't mean necessarily, although it probably did, that they were without clothing. It means that they were able, naturally gifted, to hear that small, still voice of God with them, Emmanuel, God with us. And the more spiritually intelligent we are, the more likely it is that we are going to hear who we are, the meaning of our life, the purpose of our life, the drive, the real authority that we have in our very essential being. So we're going to continue with this. If you like what you hear, I want you to consider giving feedback on our YouTube site, because I'm thinking of starting something a little different, primarily for people with a heart, and the training, like helping professionals, for this kind of teaching. It'll be separate from the YouTube channel. Let me know. In the meantime, enjoy.
And we're back. You're listening to Inner Wisdom. I'm Carolyn Craft, and we have as our guest this hour Marcia Sinatar, talking about spiritual intelligence, what we can learn from the early awakening child. We were talking before earlier, Marcia, about some of the traits of the to look for in spiritual intelligence, but also some of these children, and we can also include ourselves. I'm talking about the child in the early ages and also the grown-up child. Mm-hmm. But sometimes and often these traits are not recognized, not honored, not there's not space enough in the family for these children to actualize, I guess. What happens to the early awakeners who are in, say, an abusive family?
Well, this is what's so interesting. It's not only abusive, but in young children, for example, that have physical handicaps. I specifically talk about Christy Brown, the Irish novelist, who I guess he had some sort of neurological impairment on birth, and he could only move his left foot. He was the one about whom they made the film My Left Foot,
Yes.
from the book of the same name.
Yes.
Or Helen Keller, who had so many handicaps. So it's abuse, it's obstacles of every sort. There is an artistry, which we've alluded to earlier, that lets the young person, and of course us, everything I'm talking about in children is only meant to mirror what we have in us intrinsically. But these are individuals who use pain in the service of their greater life. So they find a way, and this is what's artful, they find a way to choose and arrange the circumstances of their situation so that the gifts are expressed. For example, if we have a Christy Brown, he happened upon some paints that were actually given to his brother. And as soon as he saw them, he thought to himself, I must have these. And he began to experiment with his left foot, and that's how he happened on the fact that he was an artist. You have Helen Keller, who said about herself that when she was a young child, she was like a clod of dirt. I mean, she had no communication abilities, and she was flailing about. But she found a way to express herself. You have Gavin de Becker, I talk about from his book, Defending the Gift, where he and his sister grew up in a home. This is to your question about abuse, where although they had a beautiful, bright, and intelligent mother, she was, I think, a heroin addict. And in the middle of the night, they had to run away and escape together to escape violence. All of these situations that young people find themselves in are also what a friend of mine calls stepping stones. You know, they're opportunities to develop a kind of intelligent, creative, or resourceful response that gives you the power to express your gifts. And I guess all of my life, Carolyn, I've been talking about this one way or another, what having gifts entails, what preferences entails, so that people understand that it's not the easy life that serves us, but it's digging into what we are, what we've been given, and using that, come hell or high water, that makes all the difference. And we all have that ability to be more right now.
Mm-hmm. You know, I have a sense, Marcia, that it's even though the writing does reflect on specific people and so forth, it's much broader than that. And there is a way that we can, or ways that we can create a space or honor or support the spiritual intelligence in our children, in ourselves,
yes,
and especially be looking for those who are already attuned to that within themselves that might be very young.
Well, you know, that's so true. And one of the points I'm making throughout, you know, I'm writing as an educator, and I think I'm really advocating for the child and the talent in each of us.
Yeah.
Throughout, and my own as well. I mean, this is certainly, everything has an autobiographical piece to it. But I think, first of all, we have to remember not to tinker with ourselves too much, not to try and fix everything, not to try and fix our children.
Yeah, I like that.
The child is fine if we would just get out of their way. You know, I speak in several places in this book about a professor of mine whose motto was, provide the support, the love, and the resources, and then step out of the child's light. And I think that's something that's very, very important. Stop all the messing around with our children's minds. And, you know, now we have this onslaught of drugs that we're giving children in order to make them more like other children.
Yeah.
This is troublesome. So I think it's important for us as individuals, let's forget the child for a minute, to recognize what having gifts entails, to associate ourselves with people, and perhaps primarily with people who have a heart for what we value and who we are. In this subsection is also why it's so difficult to find friends who empathize and accept us as we are, because we don't empathize and
Yeah.
accept us as we are.
I'm thinking not only in reading Spiritual Intelligence, but also in talking with you this morning, the individuals, the young girls, I know two or three that are, one is one of my godchildren, one is a daughter of a friend, and I think that some of the biggest challenges, I guess the frustration on the parents' part in not knowing how to embrace the child being, one in particular has been told that she needs to be on the Ritalin,
Mm-hmm.
and the mother's having a real battle with the father, a former husband,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't want to have the child on that, but she doesn't seem to have the wherewithal to know how to support and to keep supporting the child in face of everybody saying this child has to be like every other child.
Right. Well, I can't in an interview handle anybody's particular situation, but I do think that if we look at artistry, if we come back to that,
Yeah.
and we say to ourselves and about our children, the spiritually intelligent individual of whatever age seems to reconcile those feelings that being different is somehow a sin, or
Uh-huh.
they do not get overwhelmed by their own talent, their abilities, their little quirks.
Uh-huh.
They come from homes, and this is to your friend's situation, I think. They come from homes that have a high respect for everybody's little differences, little quirks,
Yeah.
little preferences.
That's true. Uh-huh.
And they kind of, live and let live. I came from a family that had a lot of problems, a lot of dysfunctions, and I talk about that in this book quite a bit. But I think in general, there was no movement to hurt anybody or wound anybody, and there was a tremendous live and let live attitude. You know what I mean? Well, if we can begin speaking, and this, I think we talked about this last time, and I certainly have discussed it at length in the Mentor's Spirit. If we can begin speaking about what works, if we can have models of spiritual intelligence, which I've tried to provide, almost ad nauseum in this book, what we find is a new language for structuring the kind of responses that we need in our family setups.
Yeah.
So this, I guess the thing I want to say is that there is a striving for unity that each of us has, including your goddaughter, her mother, her father. No matter what the breakups in the family involve, each individual has a kind of striving to unfold a kind of integrity of being. And this striving is obvious from an early age. Mm-hmm. What we have to make sure, and this I think helps in our decision making as we try to decide what's best for this child, that person, the situation, as we look at our decision making, we have to say, what will help my unfoldment of integrity and what will be an obstruction? And I think we need to enlist our physicians and teachers and therapists and friends and ask them to help us in that quest.
I was just noticing one of the quotes I wrote down, early awakeners heed their call without external support. And I'm noticing what I think I recognize as a spiritual, intelligent child. That is so true, that there is, like you were just saying, they go forward and they have it. There's something that they feel supported by that doesn't have to do with that nurturing environment or not, even though that's got to be good.
That's right. And they're not looking for permission all the time. We talk about, psychologically, we talk about getting permission to have fun, getting permission to take time out for yourself, and so on and so forth. Well, these individuals aren't looking for permission. They're busy living their life from the standpoint of their life, of their real life.
I've thought about, when you talked about play, Bill Turner, our founder of Wisdom, he's constantly saying that that's what he does. He plays, that this isn't work, that he plays.
That's right. And this, I think, is the bottom line of do what you love, the money will follow, that when we're occupationally engaged, fully engaged, we are it's like play for the child, and I make the point in Spiritual Intelligence that play is the work of childhood. It unfolds that integrity. It shows the child ways to rehearse who they're going to be. It gives them all those exploratory devices that they need, how to get along with people, how to invent answers, what tools they want and love, and so forth. But the adult needs that same arena, self-structured, full of liberty in the area of their talent, and the opportunity to be self-governing when it comes to a vocation, a way of being in the world. And I think that's really what I'm talking about.
Yeah. In addition, it's important that there is some support if one, I guess, if I have a child and I read some of your work and hear some of these ideas and can at least incorporate them, at least I'm providing a more supportive environment.
That's right. And I mean, one exciting thing is that, for example, a friend of mine who's involved with the Montessori schools just wrote a review for, I guess it's a national magazine for Montessori teachers. And one of the points I make in Spiritual Intelligence, and this is back to support, is that Montessori, the early kibbutz schools, the Waldorf systems, there's a school back east that received a lot of attention nationally called the Barclay School. There are many environments that show us models of what children need to express their inner gifts, to unfold that integrity. But at the same time, these models also show us something that we need. The opportunity to make mistakes in safety, like-minded friends and associates, the ability to use solitude creatively, stillness, all of the meditative disciplines that we know are so renewing. We could go on and on, but the focus of Spiritual Intelligence essentially says, look to your own history, your own integrity. It is with you right now. It's always been with you. It is you, and just get the static out of the way.
Well, let's pause a moment. You're listening to Inner Wisdom. I'm talking with Marcia Sinatar. We're going to be back in just a moment. Stay tuned.